Hi everyone, and welcome to this tutorial on creating your own login screen in your MS Access database. And for this tutorial we're going to just take a look at just a piece of code that you can plug into your code if you like, and if you're working with various Access databases, you're welcome to take this and use it for your purposes. Alright, so let's take a quick look at what the login form looks like. I haven't spent too much time on the cosmetics and making this thing look good. We really are going to focus for this tutorial on the functionality, on how it works behind the scenes, and just really exploring that code behind the login authentication that we're going to do. Alright, so this is the login form, and this is just quickly how I've got one user in my database, and I log in with that username, and then it just takes me through into the rest of the application. Right, so let's take a look at first of all the login form. So I'm going to go into design view, and what we've got there is just two simple text controls. Now I've just labeled those text controls, so we go into on the property sheet of those controls. If the property sheet isn't open, you can just click on property sheet in the design tab, and we've just labeled those two text controls, prefixed them with some notation, the txt username and txt password. Right, and so what we're going to do is we're going to make reference there to those two text box items as we click on the login button, and it's going to really just extract those values from those text controls. So we've got a login button. Now this, what I've used here is a modal dialog box. You can actually use any dialog box or any form holder, and the reason why I've used it is because it creates that sort of pop-up feel. It creates a sort of user login type form feel. So that's my sort of preference, but you can use any form as mentioned. Alright, so I'm going to just look at the code behind this. So what I've done is I've used the OK code here, and I've gone in and changed this slightly. I've changed the caption there to login, and I've changed the name there to CMD, prefix that CMD login. That's in the property sheet under all, and we've looked at the name and caption there. And then what we're really interested in is the code that's going to do the authentication for us. So that's going to be on the event of the button click. So on the events there, we've got the on click event, and let's just have a look at this code behind the scenes. So I'm going to click on the ellipsis, and that's going to take us straight into the code. And this is what a typical login script or piece of Visual Basic code would look like. And we've basically got just talk us through the variables and what this code is actually doing. Very, very simple actually. In essence, all we're doing is we fetching or connecting to the database, and we're really going in and fetching the values from those text controls and then passing them through to the query and checking that those records exist in the database. And that's really it. I'm going to quickly talk us through the code, especially for those who are perhaps relatively new to Visual Basic. We're dimming some variables here, so we've got a database variable, so that's going to hold a pointer to the current database, and then we've got a record set and then a boolean variable which we're going to use to just check and to see when we find those records. And we're going to use this boolean just to quickly switch on or off, or switch on, or rather switch to true as soon as we get to the record that we want to get to. Alright, so looking at the initialization, we're setting this variable here, so we're saying DVS equals the current database, so get me a handle to the current database, and then we're setting another variable here called record set user password, and we're using that database to open a record set. This particular record set, you could probably find a few ways of doing this, but this particular record set I had already created, and all this is a query that selects all the usernames and passwords from my user table. So this is my user table, and you can see it's just got username and password, and that's all we're doing. We're basically going in and fetching those records from that table. Alright, I'm just going to jump back to our code there. Alright, so what we're going to do is first check here is to see are there any records, because we obviously don't need to do anything if we don't have any records there. And if there are records, we're telling it to move the first record, and then we're telling it to go through a while loop here in the sequence. So we're saying do while, and while we're not at the end of the record set, so while record set of E of F is equal to false, so keep going through this record set, and then check this little command reference here is checking the username field within that query. So check the username field and check that equals the text field from the current login screen that we have. Now, I've labeled this login screen form login. Obviously, you've got to check your references that it matches what you've labeled your login form. And there's my reference there to txt username.value. So check that this username value is equal to the value that's in the query, and so we've got the and check there, we're checking both of the username and password, and check that that record set password is also equal to the password field that we've got in that form. And if both of those match, set this boolean value, which we've initialized here at false outside the loop, set that to true, break out. So that exit2 is going to break out of that while loop and then come back into this piece of code here. So here we're doing our check, and we're saying if b found match, so if that boolean is true, do two commands here. So we're saying do command close this current form, and then do command open the next form in the sequence. So else we're just displaying some message to say incorrect username and password, and then the last step here is just closing that record set, and we're good to go with this piece of code. So let's go and have a look at how it works. I'm going to close this database off, and it's going to run through that piece of code. Now, I've mentioned in the previous lesson how to set that login form as the first login form, and we can go and test it by typing in, let's just do something that doesn't match first. So I'm just going to type in the login and username that don't match, and we get that message box out. And now let's put something that should match in the database, and go into our database. So, alright, so thank you very much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial.